In this video, I'm going to teach you the first step of the reduction method for solving the 4x4, which involves solving the centerpieces. So as I mentioned previously, on the 4x4 there actually aren't any fixed centerpieces, so we need to solve them ourselves. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to start by solving 4 white centerpieces around a single face. So let's quickly locate all of our 4 white centerpieces. So here we have one. So the centerpieces, remember, only have one sticker on them. So here's one, here's one, here's one, and here's one. And the goal now is to get them all onto a single face together. So as you can see on a 4x4, there are effectively 2 different types of movements that we'll use to solve these centerpieces, as well as the edge pieces in the next step. But the first type of movement is just an outer layer movement. And essentially what that does is just rotates 4 centerpieces around this axis here. So doing a U simply moves this centerpiece to here, this one to here, this one to here, this one to here. And at the moment, we're not worrying about the edges and corners at all. So doing outer layer moves simply rotate 4 centerpieces around a face, and doing inner layer moves actually move centerpieces from one face to another face. So for example here, doing a wide move or an inner layer move like that moves, for example, this white centerpiece from this side, this face here, up to this face. So we'll need to use a combination of outer layer turns as well as inner layer turns to solve our white centerpieces. The easiest thing to do for beginners is to solve them in lines. So what you want to do is effectively build 2 centerpieces, connect 2 centerpieces together in a line. So if we have this white one on the top here and this white one over here, what we can do is use an inner layer turn to move this piece from the front face to the top face. And remember, note that this white centerpiece is in the bottom left position here. So when we move it up to the top, it'll also be in the bottom left position here. So it'll move from there to there. If the piece was here, it would move from that position to that position up there. So doing an outer layer L prime like that moves that centerpiece down there up to here. And because we had this white centerpiece over here, these two become connected because this one doesn't move at all while we do that turn. So after we've solved these 2 pieces, the next thing to do is to solve these 2 white centerpieces. And after we've connected those, we'll solve them together on the same face. So there's a simple way to connect these 2 pieces. So note that when we do an inner layer or wide turn, it moves this centerpiece from here up to here, like that. But in doing that, because this centerpiece up here was on this axis, or on this plane of movement, it actually moved from this top position here into the back, which is not what we want if we want to pair these 2 up. So instead of moving this up straight away and trying to pair it up, what we can do is rotate this centerpiece over to an appropriate position so that when we move this centerpiece up here, the 2 white centerpieces will become connected. So by doing an outer layer turn, which moves this white piece from here to here, and then doing this inner layer turn like that, that moves this piece and this piece so that they're in the same layer, but they're still not connected. So we can undo that. Instead, where we need to move it is over here, so that when we do a wide R like that, these 2 get paired up like so. Lastly, to finish off the white center, all we need to do is match up this line with this white line here. So we can do a U to move these 2 over here so that when we do a wide R, they all come together on the same face like that. The next step in building our 4x4 centers is to build the opposite center to our white center here. So for example, if we've solved our white center here, we can put it onto the bottom. And if we do the same on a 3x3, that means we need to solve the yellow center on the top. So solve all 4 yellow centerpieces onto this face, directly opposite the white face. Now, because we've already solved these 4 white centerpieces on the bottom, we have a few restrictions because we don't want to mess up these pieces. We'll solve these 4 yellow centerpieces in the same way. So we'll make a line of 2 centerpieces as well as another line of 2 centerpieces and then connect them up at the end. So for example here, all of our 4 yellow centerpieces are visible. So this one's here, this one's here, this one's here, and this one's here. But notice if we try to move this yellow centerpiece up to the top like that, that brings these 2 white centerpieces out of the bottom, so messes these ones up. So we can't do stuff like that without thinking about what we're going to do beforehand. If our goal is to connect this centerpiece and this centerpiece, then we can do something like this. So do an L prime, which moves this one out of the way into the back and moves this one from the front to the top. Then when we do a U like that and actually bring these 2 white ones back down, Because we've done a U and moved this one from here to here, doing an L will actually bring back the initial centerpiece that was on the top that we moved to the back. So they'll move that one back to the top. And because we do an L, these two won't be affected. So we'll actually pair this centerpiece up with this one over here. So after this, we haven't messed up the white centerpieces, and we have this line on the yellow face as well. Now, luckily here we had these two connected already on one side, and what we can do to insert these two up into the top is to do something like this. So we have to do a U2 like that, because if we didn't do that, if we simply tried to do a wide R, that does connect these ones, but it also messes up these two. So we've already broken up the white center here, which is not what we want to do. We want to solve these two pieces and keep these two intact whilst keeping the whole white center intact as well. So the way to do this is actually move these two centerpieces so that they're in the same plane of movement as these two. And then what we can actually do is replace them, bring these two over here to this side by doing a U2, so that when we move this back down to solve the white centerpieces, it solves these two as well. So doing that one more time. So we've got this whole white centerpiece, the white centerpieces, which we don't want to mess up. So we've got these two up here and these two here. So we can do a wide R to actually replace them. So that these two move to the back, move these two across over to here, so that when we do an R prime, these two aren't affected. So when we do a wide R prime, these two aren't affected. And it brings these two back into the top and doesn't mess up these ones either. So after solving our first two centers, we've solved the white one and the yellow one opposite one another. What we can do is actually hold them on the left and the right sides and solve the remaining four centers using this whole middle slice. Also note that from this point onwards, there's no need to actually do any moves which break up this yellow center or break up this white center. So we don't need to be doing any moves like this or any moves like this. The only slice moves or wide moves that we'll be doing will be along this middle layer, like that. So what we can do now is just pick another color and solve the four centerpieces of that color. And because there's only 16 more centers that we need to solve, in the vast majority of cases, you will get something like this where you already have two centers paired up for one of the centers, or maybe something even slightly better. So here, remember we've solved the yellow and the white, and we're holding them on the left and right sides. What we can do is actually solve this orange center. So we've got these two already paired up, and our two other orange pieces are here. So this one and this one. So what we need to do is actually make these two into a line and then pair them up with this line as well to create the entire orange center. So we can do something like this. So remembering that these two are here, we can actually hide this corner, hide this centerpiece into the front, move this outer face to move this centerpiece from here to here, so that when we bring this one back up, they'll be paired together. And then all that we need to do to solve these two pieces is, again, move the outer layer so that when we do a wide move, they'll be paired up like that. So here's where it gets a little bit confusing. So we've solved the yellow and the white centers opposite one another, but it's probably not a good idea to solve this red centerpiece, red center sticker opposite the orange one right away, because solving two centers opposite one another to finish is actually quite slow and quite awkward and actually a little bit difficult. So what we want to do is actually solve another center directly adjacent to this orange center in this middle layer. So remember to keep holding the yellow and the white centers on the side, and we want to solve this center here. So these four stickers. However, we don't know what color that will be. So the color of these centers definitely can't be red because orange and red aren't adjacent to one another. So it will either be green or it will be blue. However, at this point, we need to actually be familiar with our color scheme so that, if we're holding the yellow center on the left, the orange center on the front, and the white center on the right-hand side, that we know that the blue center belongs on top. And there are a few ways you can actually memorize this sort of thing so that you can do it in your solves. A common mistake would be to solve the green center stickers into this position, and you'll notice that if you actually do this and get this wrong one time, then your F2L won't make any sense at all because you'll have two centers swapped and you'll need to resolve the centers. The way I was taught to memorize this at the start was that the blue, the yellow, and the red centers all followed one another in a clockwise direction. So the blue goes to the orange to the red in this kind of clockwise direction like that. So transferring this over to a 4x4, if we've got the yellow center stickers on top and the orange center stickers on the left here, then the red ones will belong on the right hand side here, so opposite, directly opposite the orange, and following this blue, yellow, red circular color scheme, if we have the red on the right hand side here, then the blues will belong in this position here in the front. So then it's time to solve our 4 blue center stickers into these 4 positions. So we've got the orange here, the yellow on the left, and the white on the right. And what we can do to pair up these two, for example, this blue center and this blue center, and bring them down into their correct face at the same time, we can do something like this. So match this one up with this one over here by doing an R, a wide R, and then bring it across. And notice that when we did that wide R, we moved these two out of the way to break up the orange, which is something that we need to do temporarily. So when we did the R, we matched up these two. Then we do a U to move them across so that when we do a wide R prime, they come back down into the face in which they belong. And we can move them over here or leave them over here. It doesn't really matter. So the next thing we need to do is to find the other 2 blue centerpieces which belong down here. And we note that they are here and here. So we can do something like this. So we can do a wide R, which actually messes up this orange one again. And then we can either do a U or a U prime. It doesn't really matter to bring it back down. So in this case, we did a U prime and matched up these orange ones again. And then notice that what we'll have to do to actually put these 2 down here is bring this up so that we break up the orange again, move these 2 over to this position so that when we bring the orange back down, we'll have the entire 4 blue center stickers solved. So we only have 4 more centers to solve after this, and it follows that if we solve, for example, all of these green ones into this face, then all of these red ones will be down here by default. So double checking our color scheme, if we've got the blues here, that means that the green ones will belong up here and the red ones will belong down here on the front. Because we've already got this red line here in the front, it might be a bit easier to think about these last 2 in terms of solving the red. And again, we're a little bit restricted because we only have 2 centers to work with. We don't want to mess up these 2 either. So we've solved this line in the front and we need to solve these 2 red pieces into these 2 positions. The easiest way again to do this is to make these 2 into a line and then insert them into the front face. So connect these 2 up. At the moment they're diagonally across from one another. What we can do is we don't care what happens to these 2 at the moment really. So we can actually move this up to hide this red piece in the back. Then if we move this red piece over to this position, when we bring it back down, these 2 will be paired up like that. And then what we can do to insert these 2 into the front is just, like we did with the yellow center, replace it, because for example, if we put them over here and went straight down, then we'd get all sorts of things going wrong with our back centers. So what we can do instead is move them over here, replace it, do an outer layer turn to move it across here, and then do a wide turn back. And that solved all our red centers and our green centerpieces have ended up here. So now we've solved our entire 6 centers, which are comprised of 24 individual centerpieces. In the beginning, after you've solved all of your centers, it's important to check that your color scheme matches. So you can use a 3x3 to check that. So here we've got the yellows, the blues, the whites, the greens, the reds, and the oranges. So that is correct. After we've solved the centers, it's time to move on to pairing up our edge pieces.